Thanks very much, Yinan, for joining me today. So we wanted to speak to you because you're obviously an entrepreneur from the public sector, and you can tell us a bit about your background. And you've worked both as an ambassador for diversity, but also in exec and non-exec roles. So first of all, just would you like to introduce yourself? And then we thought we'd talk about the pragmatics of diversity with you.
Certainly. As you say, I'm Yinan Ezra. I basically had a 40-year career in local government, of which something like 30 years was as a chief officer in 3 different local authorities. And my emphasis has really been running large cultural services organisations, from libraries, country parks, leisure, etc., etc. My claim to fame is I was the lead for the Turner Contemporary project in Margate, which took 10 years, and other people basically finished it off. But basically that has made a huge difference to East Kent, because basically it acted as the big focus in terms of regeneration. I was a national board trustee for the Heritage Lottery Fund for 6 years for the national board. I finished my career as the chief officer at Hampshire County Council, and again, one of the areas that I kind of pioneered was the transformation of libraries into what we call discovery centres, which is really not rocket science. It's about diversifying the offer. And I think we've got some very successful libraries, not just in Hampshire, but all over the country now, that do the same thing. And I concluded my career by being the Department of Culture's national advisor for public libraries for nearly 18 months. But then after that, to keep my brain going, I've done non-exec jobs. I was vice chairman of the Hampshire Cultural Trust, which is flourishing, and I chair a local arts organisation and various other bits and pieces. But I'm getting on a bit now, so it's probably time for me to sort of relax a bit more. But
yeah, you deserve it after all that. So
well, I mean, I don't know about deserve, but no, in terms of diversity, I started my career as a race equality worker in West London, in Southall, in fact, and we were very much. I was there when Blair Peach was killed in Southall, and for me, diversity and equalities is not an extra. It's part of my life, really. It's been what I've kind of been part of, and what has guided my ethical and moral position, really, in all the jobs I've had in various places. And in terms of what you're asking, really, I mean, I think there are 2 basic issues. One is expressing diversity in terms of how services are actually delivered to the whole community, in terms of making sure that excluded groups are involved and reached out in that bit. And the other is making sure that your workforce and the people who volunteer with you represent the communities that you're working in. These aren't big things, but together they create the atmosphere of inclusion that politicians and everybody go on about, And I think my kind of plea to all you hotshot consultants is essentially to say, look, it's very important to have the policy framework, but what you want is a series of really practical things that services can actually do. And I think there are lots of good examples in the health service, but there are also some very bad examples. I mean, I was in London when there was the kind of big push for equalities officers and all sorts of other things in different, say, local authorities and the then GLC. Now, some of that worked really well, and some of those people really did transform their services, but others were promoted into jobs which were well paid but needed support to actually deliver things, and people were really set up to fail. The other the other aspect about how do you get black communities, particularly black women and others, to basically feel that they want to join boards and things that are kind of important in their local communities. First of all, it's not a natural thing, like, what do I want to, what do I want to waste all this time doing things when I actually need the money to, for example, do other things? And I think that is still a very important matter for a lot of people, not just black people, but in terms of earning money, in terms of living. But I think the other thing is the fact that these things are accessible to them. I mean, it's interesting. At the Heritage Lottery Fund, I was involved in setting up a national mentoring scheme for mainly black and ethnic minority trustees who were actually on the regional boards, because basically there were regional boards and I was the national board. And essentially we set up a really good scheme, which lasted for about 5 years or so, where individuals would apply to join the scheme, and generally they were young black men or women, and they got mentored by a board member at national level, and they had a program, which meant that they spent the year getting involved in projects, in shadowing people, and then at the end of that year felt that they at least had the confidence to maybe apply for a vacancy as a national trustee or as a chairman of a particular thing and a particular regional body. Now, and I think that was a very, very, very good project. And I think several successful applications were made, not just within the Heritage Lottery Fund, because they actually went on, applied for other non-exec jobs in other places, but at least they were given the confidence that they could actually they actually could hold their own, in a sense. Because I mean, when you're sitting in a national board and you're surrounded by people with gongs and God knows what else, and your opinion is sought, and your opinion and your experience is probably limited to grassroots black organizations, you feel intimidated, and you feel that this is not for you. And I think it's being able to convert that into a creative process for people is actually quite important. But it's painstaking, and the success rates are 50-50. They don't happen immediately. They sometimes take a while, but they are successful. And I think that model is one I really would urge.
So giving people, so just to say, so giving people, first of all, making the opportunities accessible and attractive for people, and then giving them the right infrastructure and support over the necessary period of time, so it's not a rushed thing, in order to gain the experience needed before they have the role, and to be supported in the role as well through things such as mentoring.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of mentoring, and I think that generally it's been much more successful than all the equalities policies put together, really, in terms of creating practical skills for people who then go on and occupy those positions and do so very successfully, and
yeah. And do you think at a board level, so as an ambassador for diversity, that the role we've had before, and then also as a board member, is that the two areas you would look for, is the kind of policy, but then the practical implementation of that diversity policy and how it's working in reality?
Absolutely. The latter thing, I mean, for goodness sake, I mean, the Race Relations Act was in 1970. I can't remember when it was now. 1976 was the last. That's 50 years ago nearly. I mean, so there isn't a lack of willingness. What there is a lack of creativity in terms of finding ways practically of creating paths to make that happen. I mean, it's interesting because before this interview, I looked at, for example, another national body which I had served on. I just wanted to look at the people that were on the board, and none of them were black. You know, I remember once there was one person who was black. Now, that they may be trying like mad to basically recruit, but I think it's also about the vibe that's created in organizations. And I'll conclude this by saying, in Ealing, for many, many years, there was a chief officer group of all males. Okay. There was a change of administration and people retired and stuff, and a female chief executive was appointed. Within, must be, there was natural waste that people left, etc., etc. But within, I suppose, 3 years, the majority of the chief officers were all female. Okay, because the vibe that was given off by that important appointment in terms of the chief executive across London and everywhere else was that, look, we welcome women, we need them. We want them as proper chief. We want them as chief officers and others too. And all the other women that were appointed, who I worked with, I was a fellow chief officer, were very bright. They were very competent. I learned a lot from them, etc. But I think the vibe is really important in terms of the vibe that's created, that tells the world that, well, actually, not only do we talk the talk, we actually do it, and we're not being tokenistic either,
No.
These are good professional people who deliver something for us.
Yeah, and the culture obviously changed, as you say, the vibe, the feel of the culture, so people were attracted to being there and being part of it as women. Yeah.
So those are my kind of gripes after all these years. I mean, I think it is sad still that there are not enough people that either feel motivated that they want to join these structures, or then get on them and remain on them, and that's still sad. I mean, the situation is not by any means a good situation.
No.
And for any public sector organization, having people at those levels who who come from the communities that you serve, means that you have an innate understanding of how those services and others get received and delivered in those communities, and that's good for business.
Yeah. And it's and culturally as well, you're more aligned to the people you're there to serve, aren't you? Because they're on the board with you. So that's great. Thank you very much, Ian, and that was really, really helpful. Thank you.
My pleasure, and I wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you.
in your endeavours to keep at it.